welcome everyone for attending today's Lunch and Learn. So today we're going to be looking at one of our partner organizations that we've worked with several clients on already, called Experlogix. Now, Experlogix will introduce themselves in just a moment, but at a high level, what they achieve is the delivery of fast, accurate, and dependable quotes every single time. As you can imagine, when you are in competitive scenarios, you have configurable products. You need to be responding to your client's requirements as quickly as possible. And you never, ever want to make a mistake. You don't want to introduce risk into that process. And so Experlogix is a fantastic tool for eliminating some of that risk. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Daryl and Jimmy to speak a little bit more about Experlogix. Daryl, go ahead.
Thanks very much, Rufus. Hi, everyone. My name is Daryl Badler. Pleasure to spend your lunchtime with you. So I'm a sales director with Experlogix based in London, and I primarily look after the UK and Ireland markets, and I'm joined by my colleague, Jimmy, who's part of our pre-sales organization. Okay, so Experlogix as an organization, we've been around for over 20 years, and we have two main solutions that we work with, one being CPQ, Configure Price Quote, which is going to be the focus of our conversation today, and document automation, which is a nice add-on to CPQ, and that gives you the ability to generate rich customer-facing documents based on quotes. The industries that you see here are in line with that of HSO. So primarily CPQ is more suited to companies that sell a large number of products that require a high degree of configuration and then be able to price that configured product accurately to deliver a clean and valid quote at the end of it. So initially, we're looking at manufacturing, professional services, and retail being the key industries that will be requiring an out-of-the-box, robust, built-for-purpose CPQ solution. The CPQ market in general, so we've been told by 2027, it's going to reach $4.5 billion. And there's a couple of drivers for that we're seeing. So the first is the way businesses are growing and the complexity and number of products that they're selling today, which creates a more complex sales process. So as you onboard new products and you have additional rules that will drive what can and can't be configured, they ultimately will have to go down the CPQ path because other solutions that I'll talk about in a second are just not going to be fit for purpose. We then have personalization. So this is more on the consumer side, like we all are. Whereas before, companies can just have a handful of pre-configured products and allow the end customer to pick one of them. Today's world, it's more about, well, I want to pick a product, a base product. I want to configure it exactly to my specifications to meet my specific requirements. And that's what these companies have to facilitate. I would also add here that if you look at the M&A activity that's happening where companies will acquire additional businesses to then have additional products to sell to their customers. What always ends up happening is they inherit these IT stack silos that are not connected. It therefore makes it very difficult for these organizations to bundle together these different products and price them accurately. So it does remain a manual process. So that's, again, a key driver where we're seeing the market going. In terms of Experlogix CPQ, there's a couple of challenges that we've had from customers that approach us to look for CPQ. And it's not an exhaustive list, but it's kind of the key ones. So the first is spreadsheets. So you'll be surprised how many companies today will actually use Excel to manage their quoting process. And in most cases, or in some cases, it will work, depending on how big or small the company is and the level of configuration that's required. But over time, as these companies scale and then more and more products get introduced and then more and more rules are overlaid on top of one another, these spreadsheets can get huge. And then it becomes an overhead to manage and maintain those spreadsheets, the knowledge of which often resides in one or two people's heads within the company. So it becomes a very manual process to create quotes. it becomes a very slow process, often taking days and weeks, where it should be taking you, minutes or hours to get a quote out the door. And these companies that use Excel, it's manual in the sense that it has to have these swivel chair actions, quotes going to different teams in the organization to end up with a resulting quote. And then that's where human error comes into play, which will then lead to increase in the number of orders that will fall out, which is never good for any company. Secondly, we have companies that decide to go down the path of developing a CPQ solution in-house, which again is fine. And in some cases it works great, but then it adds an additional IT overhead in those companies to manage those products or those in-house solutions. And again, scale and onboarding of new products becomes a huge challenge. I actually had a conversation just yesterday, Jimmy and I, where it's a translation company that's primarily sold translation platforms. And this will allow customers to do their own translation, but now they want to move into the subscription service arena, which the solution that they've built today cannot support. So that's driven them to go out and say, well, we need to either get a new CPQ solution in that can manage both our platform and subscription services, or we look at other options. So that was a good conversation. And then lastly, we have the legacy ISVs that had a CPQ solution, but did not keep up with the market or the other systems that exist within an ecosystem. So everything else has moved on except for that one bit of the puzzle, and that causes the same challenges in businesses around quoting. In terms of integration, so Experlogix has pre-built connectors for D365 for sales, finance and operations, and commerce. We are the only CPQ vendor in the market today that has connectors for all of those D365 solutions. And we also integrate with Power Pages, formerly Power Apps Portal, and Dataverse as well. So at a high level, architecturally, this is how everything fits together. So at the top, you have the D365 solutions, and this can be, well, this will be both the entry and exit point to the Experlogix configurator. So you as a sales rep or a reseller or distributor will access CPQ from one of those channels. You will be able to launch the configurator from either the opportunity, the quote, or the order entity. And from that point onwards, everything that you do will be driven by Experlogix. So all the products that you see, all the options that are available, the pricing, discounting logic, the rules and business logic that will determine what can and can't be selected is all managed within Experlogix. And at the end of that configuration journey, we will simply write back that information to the host system. And we call it omni-channel rather than multi-channel because it is truly omni-channel. So it's not the case of, oh, I can access CPQ from commerce and F&O, but it's more the case of, well, I can begin a quote in commerce. I can then pick up the same quote in sales. I can activate the quote. I can create the order. I can fire that into Dynamics F&O, and then also access the same quote from that system as well. So it kind of brings everything together. And with the addition of Dataverse integration, we can use information within Dataverse to determine and set the context for these quotes. So you can use things like the location of the customer, the region, the currency, or any other information to then drive what products are shown and what can and can't be selected within that specific quote journey. Just a snapshot of customers that we have globally, all of which are on Dynamics. So the same industries that I've mentioned before, and you'll be able to see kind of the width and breadth of companies that we've worked with. Fundamentally, yes, all the products are different that these companies sell, but fundamentally the pain points when it comes to quoting are all the same. It takes us too long to quote. There's too many errors in our quotes. It costs too much to quote. So those are the key challenges that are common across all these different sectors and all these different companies. Specifically in the UK and over in Ireland, some well-known brands that are also Dynamics customers using Experlogix, people like Dairygold, Ashita up in Birmingham. And then we have several customers down below, which are fairly new customers to us, and they're currently going through implementations with imminent go-live dates as well. So quite a broad array of different customers, different challenges in terms of CPQ and the products also that they sell. Okay, so I've got Jimmy on the call who is prepared to give you a live demonstration of CPQ just to show you exactly what I've just discussed in terms of how you access the configurator, what that looks like from an end user perspective, and how everything gets synchronized back into the host system. So Jimmy, I'll hand that over to you.
Great, thanks, Aaron. I'll start sharing the screen so we can see what it looks like. All right, so we are now in the CRM system, and the scenario I'm presenting is I'm in technology. We're selling server components and other processors and want to create a quote for one of my clients. So how do I do it? We go to the top ribbon where we have embedded the configure button to start configuring our quote. And as Dara already said, you could also do it from your opportunity or your orders or another place. In this case, we'll go from the quote entity and click on the configure, which will open up the configurator page, which has multiple configurations. We have the truck here, and we have our technology one, which will go into this one. We're going to configure a processor in our first scenario. So we just go into the processor, which is a guided selling approach. So you can design the configuration in any way, shape, or form you want to align to your business process. In this case, it's a guided selling approach where I have questionnaire. So what is important for me or our client? In this case, you might want processing power. And then the next question will be asked. So what will the processor be used for? Could be data modeling, which shows you a family of processors used for data modeling. Would be, let's say, select the IoT. We get a different family of processors specifically for the IoT. Now, we'll go in for data modeling in this case, and we can select the family that we want, which opens a new window where we can select the processor that we want to add to our configuration. So let's go ahead and select one. And this opens a very big list of all the possible processors in that family. But using this option picker, we can filter very easily on what we want. So let's say we want a specific amount of cores. We can here say we want 32, more than 32 or the same as, and it filters accordingly. So here we can make our selection. We can also add multiple if we want to, but we'll just go for one. Press save, and it gets added as the processor. So here we also have all the details of the processor, and I can enter the quantity that I want. And for me, everything is fine now. So we can save and close this configuration. But we're not actually done here because this is just one part of the quote that we're selling. So we can open up the configurator again. You could also do it from the same page, but this shows you the configuration that you have. You can go into the quick view, which shows you a very short summary of the configuration that you made. So let's add a new configuration to our quote. In this case, we'll go into the server products. Here we have two more options that we could into. We can do a basic configuration for server modules or an advanced configuration with more options. So let's first go and create a basic configuration. So opening this up, first thing we see, we have a header right here where we also import the customer data from the CRM, just to give an overview, but you can also use the data from the CRM inside of your configurator, show different kinds of pricing per country, let's say, or discounting, etc. So here we can select what kind of module we want. So we can go for a management module, which hides the other ones. And now we can select the processors. So in this case, we have two processors, front and rear sockets, or we have the option to go for one. Now we can make the same selection of processors and do the same filtering, but I'll just select the first one in this case. And here we have a new option for the memory. And something that you can also incorporate is upselling. So let's say I thought this quota was already done already, and it's perfectly tailored to my client. If we want to save and close before we close, we get a new suggestion. The memory is suggested for this module to fully function, because having a server without memory, you're gonna get a hard time creating it. So we get this upsell message to add a DDR4, and now we can apply and cancel because we don't want to go outside of the configuration, and it automatically selects the memory. But before we can add it, we see a red block again. We need to configure our memory. So here we can select what type of memory we want, which also can specify the size. And we see we have 16 slots available, so the quantity is only limited up to 16. And if we hover over our slots, oh, let's see, we can actually see a preview image of what our memory will look like inside of our module. So let's say we have 2 processors now, but I want to switch to 1 processor. Our available slots also gets decreased to 8. Hovering over it again, oh, there we go. We see the right one is now being deselected. Can also add some persistent memory to this. Also select the size that we want and the quantity available, matching the available slots on our module. This also automatically creates the BOM. So if we go to our BOM view, we see we have a neatly processed BOM where we also have only 1 processor added, which has a air-cooled front heat. But would we select our 2 processors and go back to the BOM view, we can now see we have 2 processors, but we have different kind of air cooling. So we have 1 for the front added automatically and 1 for the rear heat. So now I'm done with this configuration. I can save and close again, and this will all get saved back into our CRM and added to our quote. Now, the last one I'll show you is the advanced configuration, which really shows you the power that you have for the configuration tool. So once again, we're going to add a new configuration, go into our server products, and create an advanced configuration for your senior salespeople. So once again, we have the header with the customer information, and we have here the empty slots of our module. So here on the top left, we could add a module. And this also has certain properties. So it has a unit, which takes up a certain space and a width. So if we enter the management module, which is 2 units, our bottom left option will be hidden because it takes up 2 spaces, so we cannot add one. So it eliminates the error of selling too many modules available for the chassis. Now, going to the top right, we can add another one. Let's go for a double one. Again, it will hide this one, but we also now have the option to configure the module itself. So adding it to the chassis, we can go into the configuration of such model where we have the same option as before. We can select the size, we can increase it if we want to, and go back into the configuration. I actually want to have more. I want to also populate the bottom right. So I'm going to select one which only has 1 unit. This one right here, which again opens up our bottom right unit to be added. So going in here, I also have the compute, which is liquid cooling. And if I add this one, we get an error. And it says air-cooled units and liquid-cooled unit models cannot be combined to the same chassis. So we get an error which we need to resolve. So of course we know where the error is at the last one because this one is liquid cooled. So here we can select again this one where we have the air cooled and everything's all right again. So one thing is also that we have on the chassis, this is automatically chosen based on the modules. So if I were to select on my top left one a very big module, which takes 2 units and is a full width, we would also get a different chassis applied to it to be able to store the unit into our chassis. Of course, everything here also gets automatically added to the BOM we'll be generating, and which will get stored eventually into our ERP system for processing. So one more thing that we have here is we have a discount type. So we can select what kind of discount we want to give. We can do a fixed amount or percentage based. And here using a slider, you can easily select how much discount you want to give over the price that you have. And this also comes with an approval. So if we're a very enthusiastic salesperson and we really want to close this deal, so we're going to give a crazy 50% amount of discount, we see now we would need to get approval, which gets written back into the CRM system, where an approval flow would need to happen before we can actually send out and activate our quote. So let's go ahead and add more of our modules, configure this one, turn. And now also something we have is in our quick view, shows you your chassis slots, which are fully populated. So now we're done configuring. We can save and close our configuration. And now everything has been stored back into our quote, ready to be sent out. And now what we can do using our document automation solution, we can use all of the details right here to send out a neatly appropriate quote containing all the information. So how we would do that is go to our Smart Flows button right here, also embedded into the ribbon, which shows you all the flows of the entity that you are in right now. So this shows all different kinds of flows for a quote entity. So based on your quote, you could use a different flow, send more information or less. It all depends on what you want to do. In this case, we'll go for a formal quote, which will open up the execution panel, where we have multiple questions. So here, these questions have impact on the actual document you'll be generating. So we have a question, do we want to include product information? So what this would do is for each of the line items that we have inside of our quote, we would retrieve the accompanying information. Same thing with the terms and conditions. You could add a personalized text message to your quote. You could hide anything for your quote. You could also automatically send it for e-signature. We do integrate with DocuSign, Adobe Acrobat Sign, OneSpan Sign, Certify, and as of late, Notarius, which all get used inside of this flow. So now we could press next, which will generate the flow, automatically send it out as an email to our client. So here we have the quote. We also automatically created a note back into our CRM containing the details of our quote. So if we go back, go to the details, we see we have our quote for Bob Jones. So we can open this up, where we have our Experlogix quotation and the line items that we just had for the summary of the configuration that we made. One thing you can also do on the quote is once you activate your quote, it would also get written back into the F&O system, where it would create a sales order and automatically create your BOM, but I won't share it inside of this demo. So that's basically what I wanted to show you all on the configuration side. Thanks for listening in.
I mean, I hope you found that insightful. Okay, it was a brief introduction. We're happy to schedule further calls or sessions to go through specific requirements that you or your customers may have.